Hello everyone and welcome to our next webinar in the series Waste Technology Deep Dives. My name is Nele Kapp and I'm working on solid waste management at Unhabitat. And I'm welcoming you to join us today for this very interesting session. And thank you. Have a good day, a good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Before we start, I would like to do some housekeeping rules. So please, if you look on the right side in your screen, there is the control panel and you will find there a box for questions. So it says questions. Please put here if you have any questions to any one of our speakers and also indicate to whom the question is directed. We will then try to answer them in the end at our Q&A session. If you have any general remarks, just want to say hello, or add some other information, please use the chat for that. So questions in the Q&A, other things in the chat. Just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded and we will also share the slides on our website together with the recording. This will be on the NUA Campus website where you also registered for this webinar. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Wuppertal Institute for Environment, Climate, Energy and Unhabitat under the Urban Pathways Project, which is financed by the German Federal Ministry for the Environment under the International Climate Initiative. In the project, we cooperate with cities in the Global South to implement activities in the areas of sustainable mobility, energy, and waste management. The aim of the project is to contribute to the climate targets, the SDGs, and the new urban agenda. We also organize capacity building and exchange of good practices, because we believe that we can all learn a lot from each other. Also, this webinar is of course part of this. So last week, we had an introductory session on materials recovery facilities, MRFs or MRFs, as well as integrated resource recovery centers, IRRCs, focusing on the technologies that are in use. Today, we will hear more about them, but focusing a bit more on the design and management of such facilities. First, Sylvia will give us a bit more of a general overview, and then we will learn more about the MRFs in Buenos Aires from Melissa. But before we do that, we want to hear a bit from you. And so we have prepared again, as always, some polls. So get your mouse ready to answer a few of our questions. And we are going to launch the first poll. As always, we want to know who we are talking to. So please let us know which sector you are from. Are you a national, regional government, local government, NGO, private sector, or anything else? We will give you a bit of a time to find the mouse, to find out how you click on the points. This is just a warm-up question. We will have a few more. And then we will close the poll and show you the results. And as you can see, we are a very mixed variety. 1/5 local government, NGO and private sector, a few from national regional governments, and also a third from others. Thank you for that. And now we'll go to our next question, which you will see in a second on the screen, and which is wondering if you yourself have ever been in a materials recovery facility or in an integrated resource recovery center. Yes or no? Just to get an idea if you already are a bit familiar with the concept or not so much maybe. Simple yes or no. And we will close the poll to have a look at the results. And wow, 70% have already been inside a MRF or an IRC. So that's great, good to know. The other 30% after today's session, you will feel like you have already been in one a bit. I know Melissa has lots of pictures for you. And we will go to the next question. Today we have a few we want to engage you a bit more before we get started. Has your city implemented a differentiated waste management system for recyclable materials, for example, paper, cardboard, plastics? So basically, for example, do you have segregation at source, or do you know if your city has for example, Mrfs or similar. Yes, no, not sure. The options you have to click here. And also here we will have a look at the results. So over 50% say yes and 40% say no. So also this a bit of everything. Thank you for that. And we have, I think, one more, and then you're done. Then you can relax and enjoy the presentations. Has your city formalized waste pickers? It's not the question if in your city there are waste pickers, but more if your city has formalized waste pickers that are in your city. I mean, of course, if you're from a city that doesn't have the concept of waste pickers, you can also click not sure. Yes, no, not sure. And let's also have a look at those results. Okay, also here we see a variety. 15% say yes, 45% no, 40% not sure, which also includes, of course, people who are from cities which don't have waste pickers. So thank you for that. I think we'll hear a bit about that also later. So now, thank you again for participating in the polls, and I will introduce our first speaker. And very happy to do that. So Sylvia Devan is the founder and CEO of Sweepsmart, a social enterprise on a mission to build zero waste ecosystems. After her studies at Delft University of Technology, Sylvia worked for 5 years as a strategy consultant at the Boston Consulting Group. Before and next to Sweepsmart, she is advisor and trainer for social entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs internationally. She lived and worked in Madagascar, Tanzania, Cuba, and India. Aside from several awards with Sweepsmart, she was elected for Vital Voices and Bank of America's Global Ambassadors Program in 2019 and as one of Viva 400 Inspiring Women in the Netherlands in 2020. So we are very glad to have her with us. Great, Sylvia, we can see your presentation and yourself. Perfect, we don't hear you yet though.
Yes, perfect. Now everything is working, right?
Yeah, the presentation is not yet in presentation mode.
Working on that as well.
Great. Then
okay.
Thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Yes, great. Thank you, Nelle, for the introduction, and of course, thank you for inviting us. It's a real honor to speak to this group to tell a little bit about what our work and what we know about designing and managing MRFs. Really brief introduction about Sweepsmart, because I mainly want to tell you about the Mrfs itself. I started the company because I was on a landfill in India, and I think you have seen those images, a waste mountain with people working and living on top of it. And just wanting to do something about it, I started the company with Niels van den Hoek, who was at that time already working in the waste industry for a long time, with the philosophy, okay, how can we bring best practices from Europe, where a lot of good things have already been developed, to upcoming economies, but also completely reinvent them to make it work in the local context, because we believe you cannot copy and paste the solutions to work in that context. So I will tell you a lot about MRFs in upcoming economies, because we also have a lot of experience in it. And really, how can we bring the best of these two worlds together? And I think Nelle already mentioned zero waste ecosystems that create a win for everyone. So we really are trying to build a waste sector in these economies that that is modern and efficient. If you look at what we do, we can provide turnkey projects in setting up waste collection, waste sorting, and processing, from the consult phase, doing feasibility studies or more tailor-made consulting, all the way to designing, making sure it's built in the right way, supplying equipment through our network of suppliers, and then implementing and transferring it so that the organization can run independently, and we can also be involved on the long term. So this gives you a perspective of where do we come from in terms of the knowledge and experience that we have. So I will explain something about the Mrf design and the Mrf management. In terms of design, I will talk about also not just the technical design, but also how does it fit into the ecosystem and the business case. And then more the technical part about Mrf management, something about training and processes, and then how can you manage this based on data that you gather working on ground. So first, a remark to make. We believe that MRFs fit the best in a segregated waste management system. You might have heard this already before, but if you get mixed waste, it is very difficult to segregate because the material loses its value. It gets dirty, for example, the recyclable materials, and it's hard to separate. And it makes the business case, which is already a challenge, even more challenging because you get lower value materials in. So that's why it's really important to set up source segregated collection to bring only clean, well, not clean, but I mean purely, ideally as pure as possible, recyclable materials to the MRF. Then it's very important to not just think about the MRF itself, what happens in the center, but how does it work in the local ecosystem. And when you look at that, one thing that is important is the operation. So that's what a lot of people will be thinking about, the value chain. So where does your waste come from? Does it come directly from the households? Are you going to collect only the dry recyclables, or going to set up a complete collection system also for the other streams? What kind of volumes are you getting in? Then the center itself, of course, the capacity, the process, the business case, what does the site look like? And on the back end, of course, where are you going to bring your sources of waste? So you can sell the recyclables to the market, the low value material, you might be able to do co-processing in cement ovens or in another kind of way, extract energy from it. And then if you have organic waste and residual waste, you need to think also what to do with that. But aside from the actual value chain, technically it's also important to think about organization. So what kind of regulation is there in place on source separation, for example? Is there collection fees if you want to collect the fees from households, the waste from households? But also very important question, who's the owner of the center and the equipment and the materials? Is the government owner of that, or is there a private company involved that is owner? That also relates to the question of the operator. So who is operating the center? Again, is that a government or a private entity or an NGO? And how do you organize that? Is there a concession for it? How does the business case then work related to that? And then, of course, an important question in upcoming economy is also, what do you do with the informal sector? And we try to work as much as possible in models where the informal sector is included. We have centers in Bangalore that are operated by former waste pickers, but there's also other ways to include them. So we think it's important to think about it when you set up MRFs in upcoming economies, if there is an informal sector existing, for example, of course. Then if you look, then of course, another important question is funding. So who's going to, where's the site and the buildings going to come from? Equipment and consulting to set it up. And of course, also, it will not be economically sustainable potentially from day one. So then you need some startup OPEX. The business case, yeah, this is always a bit of a challenging question because the business case is very different for every center. And it depends mainly on the material quality that you get in and the model that you build around that. And yeah, there's maybe not very nice news to say, but it's not an easy business case. We see in general it's really tight margins. And what we see is if you get good quality material for free, or if it's really good quality, you can also pay for it to waste collectors or households or whoever however you want to organize that supply chain. But if you want to collect lower value materials, so lower value dry, for example, dry recyclables that are difficult to recycle, like multi-layer plastics or foils, but even more if you want to collect all the waste, so you also want to collect organic and residual waste, then you need some kind of compensation for the collection costs, because it is a cost. And organic waste and residual waste even is also a cost to process that. So then the business case becomes bigger and also more complex. But the good thing about it is then you have control over the source of the waste, and you can really go all the way to the households or the companies to make sure they segregate properly. Then in terms of business case for the center, of course, pretty straightforward: operational cost, people, electricity and maintenance, and there's a financing and management cost for the center as well. And then at the back end, there is material revenues from the materials that you sell. So the recyclable materials you can sell to recyclers or aggregators. Combustibles, you might be able to get some money for it from co-processing, and residual waste and organic waste is at a cost normally, and so that you need to take care of that in your business case. And then there is a new development emerging, which I think is very positive, because these business cases are so tight. There is now a market coming up for plastic credits, which means companies that produce plastic or that sell plastic are willing to pay for plastic that is collected and disposed of or recycled responsibly. So that actually puts a value in particular on those low value materials I mentioned. So for example, the foils and the multi-layer plastics. As well as EPR, so that's extended producer's responsibility. It's a bit similar. You make the producer responsible, but that is a more formal scheme through the government. So we can do a separate webinar about this, so I think we shouldn't, but this gives you an impression that this is a new development that makes it easier to close the business case for these MRFs. Then talking about the design, this is more the technical part. So it depends on a lot of variables to see what is the right design. There are input factors, so things like your waste quantity and quality. What kind of processing steps do you want to take? Is it sorting? Do you want to compress the waste? Do you want to shred the waste? Which relates to what your clients want. So what are the requirements from your outlets? Then there are logistic considerations. So sometimes it makes sense to have a big MRF outside of the city. But for example, in Bangalore, the traffic is so congested that they actually chose to do smaller centers distributed across the city to then process and, for example, compress the material there, which then limits the transport movements out of these congested areas. So it's something to think beyond the MRF actually only. Then things like, okay, is there already land and a building available? And if so, what are the restrictions? Or is it greenfield? And of course, the budget. Then there are certain design variables. And actually the most important one is the number of sorters, because if you purely look at the sorting, of course, the other processing steps have other dependencies. And the number of sorters, of course, depends on the length of the belts, but you can also put multiple lines. So this is something you can play around with. And related to the number of sorters, to create your sorting efficiency, is how do you set up for sorting? So do they need to segregate a lot of different streams? That's more complex than if they would only need to segregate one particular type of stream or one color. So then they can pick actually a lot more per hour. So it's really a combination of those two things. And then there's also what we call the pre and the post transport. So that is, how does the material go to your sorting conveyor belt? Is it through a hopper? And does that need to be done manually, or can you do it with a shovel, for example? And post transport the same, like can you use forklifts, for example, to make it more efficient? And there are some mechanization steps which I will show on the next slide. Then if you look at then how to design, what are the considerations if you take all these variables into consideration? What is very important is to have an efficient flow. So we often see if people start designing a center that they just put the building block somewhere, or there needs to be a baler here and a sorting belt there, and we need some storage. It's not about putting the blocks in the right place. You really need to think about a flow through your center and how do the people work. And then you should try to limit the times that people have to touch the materials. So really limit the movements that you make with the materials. Then efficient storage and stacking as high as possible obviously is important to utilize your space in the best way. And then an important consideration is also, what do you want to optimize for? Do you want to optimize for as low capex as possible or as low opex as possible? Do you actually want to create or maybe maintain jobs as well? So we think that in upcoming economies, it doesn't make sense to mechanize as much as you would do in Europe, for example, because there is more labor available, and you would actually like to include, for example, this informal sector. So I will show some examples on how we have done that in the markets we've worked for, but that's really what we believe as striking a balance between mechanization and manual labor. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so talking about mechanization for the different processes. So for sorting, there are a lot of different opportunities. Again, I think it depends on what you want and what kind of skill you foresee when it starts making sense to add mechanization step. An important step that you can do is using trommels, like in this picture, or moving screens that can actually separate the fine material which goes through, but also the screens can separate 2D and 3D material. So you'll have your paper and cardboard, for example, and the plastic foils on one side, but you will have your PET bottles and glass on the 3D line. That's a really important first step that we think you can take, and we have a design ready for a center that incorporates that, which I will show you in a minute. Then the next step can also be to use air separation. So that means you blow the materials, lighter materials you can blow out of the streams. So that's already more mechanizations, and you can use optical sorting, or there's now also AI-based sorting to do that. Then for metals, there is various methods possible. And if you even go farther than that, you can use robots. Baling is a bit more straightforward. So the basic things that you see is a vertical baler, which can be it's kind of batch processing. You load them, they compress the materials, and you take the bale out. If you go to a higher capacity, you need a vertical baler like you see in this picture, which is loaded automatically from the top, and the bales are coming out more continuously in a horizontal flow. Then in terms of logistics, to feed the material, you can have hoppers, you could also have bag openers, you can have belts feeding the material. For the logistic on site, you can have bags, smaller ones or larger ones, but at a certain point in time, you start working maybe with containers, things that you can move around with a forklift. And then forklifts, as mentioned, or shovels to put the materials in. And this is a nice picture of a telehandler, which actually has multiple different uses. Well, then here is just an example of a site layout and a smart workflow. And here you can really see we don't just look at the site, but we also look at how does the workflow go within the center. So it should all be logical. And then to give you two examples, we have two kind of models that we have already created. This is what we start with, really small models as mentioned, for Bangalore, because we saw an opportunity there. This can do, one belt can do about 3 to 4 tons per day. And if you want to increase the capacity, you can make the belt longer, or you can put double lines. And this is, this is nice for smaller centers, but when you scale up, it's really good to include some kind of mechanization. And that is this one that I mentioned. You see the blue box here on the left picture at the top. That's a ballistic separator. That's what I mentioned. What is a screen? And there you will have, first you will pick out any bulky kind of items on the conveyor belt, and then later on you have 2D and 3D materials, so that the sorters, as mentioned, if they can need to segregate less, if the complexity is simpler, so there's more uniform materials and they only need to pick 1 or 2 things, then they can sort much faster than if there's a lot of different materials on the belt, and they also need to segregate more types of materials. So in those centers in Bangalore, they actually sort almost 30 or 36 streams on such a small belt. So you can imagine it's more difficult, so it's also slower. So that's about the MRF design. Then about the MRF management. And 2 things are very important: training and processes, and then the data management side. quickly recapping, okay, what is the value for the MRF itself by doing this? So by bringing sorting and processing technology, by building the capabilities, by putting processes in place, data tracking, and also proper maintenance and service, you can actually process more waste with less resources in safe and hygienic centers. So it's more efficient and more ergonomic and clean. And because it is more efficient, you can also make the business case work more easy. And then touching upon this low value waste material streams that I mentioned in the beginning, it means you can actually sort more types of waste than you would otherwise do. And then with data tracking, I'll get to that as well, you can also improve the efficiency of the center continuously. With regard to the processes, training is very important of the site managers, of the people that work on the site, to really teach them how to run a small waste factory. And linked to that, you can put the right processes on paper. So really stepwise, okay, how to set up the operations, how to maintain the equipment, have the right checklists, have a clear workflow so everyone knows what they are doing. So it's really, it comes into the nitty-gritty stuff of, okay, exactly when do you need to clean the belt, how do you start it up, etc., etc. It does really help, because it is important to become as efficient as possible, also because this business case is a challenge. And the more and more you are on top of things and you make this clear, the better you can run the MRF. Related to that is the data side of it. So we always say, if you want to know what's going on ground, you need to collect data. So these are some examples of data that we collect in terms of incoming and outgoing volumes, man hours, so that you can also track productivity. And there's also an example that you can see in the purple graphs on collection. This is a project that we did where we also looked at improving the collection efficiency. And you really saw, once we implemented, at first they did not know how many stops they actually made per day. So we started tracking, and then from it was 40 to 50%. We did daily meetings to discuss with them, why did you not make the stops, what went wrong, and to coach the drivers to become more efficient. It really went up to above 95% or 98% even if you don't count truck breakdowns. And also the collection efficiency, you can also see that it really increased stepwise. So it's all about continuous management and talking to the teams to see how they can improve, supported by data. Then this last slide, I won't go into all the details, but we are looking at setting up an IT system, or actually we are developing it already to monitor all these kind of things. So you have a weighing scale that can monitor the incoming waste, stock check so that you can easily just scan QR codes of all the materials that is there, biometric devices so that you know the man hours, financials, monitoring whatever you're selling, and then putting all of that into the kind of dashboards that I was mentioning. Because until now we have worked a lot with spreadsheets, but to make the data tracking actually much more efficient, you can also use real IT solutions, which will enable the operations even more. So yeah, that's it for now. I'm happy to answer any questions, of course, during the Q&A session. And these are some of the partners we've worked with, and looking forward to see if there's also any people in the audience who would want to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia, for this very interesting presentation and for showing a bit an overview of everything that needs to be taken into account, and for showing it's not easy, but you can do it, and for also showing in the end the value of data that we are also really promoting. So thank you for that. And I think there are also already some questions, but we'll come back to those later in the Q&A session. And now we will go to our second panelist, Melissa Soledad Wilkinson, who joined the government of the city of Buenos Aires in 2014 through a young professional program, and is currently working at the same government, so in the city of Buenos Aires, as New Technologies Operative Manager in the Ministry of Public Space and Urban Hygiene. She holds a degree in biological science and a master's degree in environmental management, and we are very happy to have her and present us the case of Buenos Aires. Melissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nelly, for the invitation and for considering the city of Buenos Aires as a case study. I hope, do you see okay my presentation?
We see you and we see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the idea of today was to tell you a little bit about our case study of the city of Buenos Aires regarding material recovery facilities, design and management. So to start with, we must say that the city of Buenos Aires has two waste streams, what we call humid, that are mainly organics and other materials. They go to another facilities, and the recycling waste stream that for the city of Buenos Aires, it's managed by what we call urban waste pickers. We have over 5,112 urban waste pickers formalized and organized in 12 cooperatives. So when we say about recyclable materials, what we are talking about is mainly clean and dry waste of cardboard, white paper, mixed paper, newspapers, magazines, all the types of plastics, glass, metal cans such as aluminum and steel. So this is what we receive in our recycling waste stream. All this waste is collected by different strategies. Some of them are door-to-door collection, and that they mainly door-to-door collection. We receive high quantity and of good quality, so it's a good way to collect. Then we have what we call green points, that are drop-off sites where people can go and give the recyclable materials to these places where they can be attended or not. And then we have recyclable bin containers. Every 150 meters, citizens have a bin where they can throw their recyclable materials. For this system, we have over 133 trucks available, and there are 14 recycling centers that are places where the urban waste pickers sort the materials. They have conveyors where they separate the recyclable waste, and they have balers, but nothing more. And then we have 3 clean material recovery facilities that have much more technology, and those are the ones that I'm going to present now. So here you have like door-to-door collection. You can see the citizens giving in hand to the urban picker the recyclable materials. You have this recyclable bin container, the second photograph on the top, and the third one is the drop-off sites where people can leave their recyclables. And then we have a service for special generators that is also door-to-door collection. And in the bottom at the right, you're going to see a photo of a common recycling center. You're going to see the conveyors in the at the end of the photo over here. Okay, let's go. So when we talk about the Mrfs, the city of Buenos Aires have implemented 3 Mrfs. One, it is located in the north, another in the east, and the third one in the south. The recycling center Saavedra is operated by El Amanecer de los Cartoneros, that is a cooperative of urban waste pickers. It's in operation since 2018 and has a capacity of 12 tons per hour. We have 2 shifts and 12-hour operation. The recycling center of Baracas is also operated by a cooperative of urban waste pickers called Movimiento de Trabajadores Excluidos. It's in operation since 2018 and has a capacity of 10 tons per hour, 2 shifts, and 12-hour operation. The third one is the recycling center Chilabert, that's operated by the cooperative Aleli. It's also a cooperative of urban waste pickers. It's in operation since 2016 and has a capacity of 10 tons per hour, 1 shift, 6-hour operations. So this is just to give an idea there. For the city of Buenos Aires, it's really a new technology. It's only been like 4 or 5 years, and the last year with COVID, it changed a little bit our idea of what a Mrf should be, but hopefully this will be solved. So the Green Center of Saavedra receives commingled municipal and commercial dry recyclables, mainly paper and cardboard, cans, plastic bottle and plastic film, and has a recovery rate of over 70%. The Recycling Center of Barracas receives mainly the same material and has a recovery rate over 73%. And the Green Center of Chilabert receives mainly municipal dry recyclables from bin container, and this one has a recovery rate a little bit lower of 70%. So when we talk about Mrf, for us, it is important to see the flow, the waste flow. So we are gonna show you the Mrf of Barraca as a case study, but it's very similar in Chilabert and in Saavedra. So the truck has an entrance in the bottom, right? It goes to the truck scale, and then there is a bag collection and weighting area where the bags or the material is weighted before it gets to the classification area. The idea is to have a pre-selection and to see which material is being received, mainly because as it comes from citizens, sometimes it's not as well segregated as we want. Then we have the classification area, where you have the line processing, and last but not least, the product storage area. That this is some very important key aspect when you consider the design, because the product storage is something that you have to take into account, especially in an incipient recycling market. So there you have the waste flow. The idea is to be circular and not to be mixed in from one side to another one, so that there is not mixed contamination or nothing like that. So I'm gonna try to tell you a little bit the Mrf components and how is the process, just for a quick review. So always there is a pre-selection area where you see, for instance, cardboard, only cardboard, or maybe there comes a truck from a big generator with only white paper. What we do is we don't get it in the line. That material goes directly to the baler machine, so that because if it gets in the line, you're gonna have a lot of problems processing the material. So when you see a single stream recyclable material, we take it out the line and it goes directly to the baler. Also, if you see like discard elements, or for instance a chair, a bathtub, or something like that, all those things appeared in these places where the urban pickers take the material and put it in another container for later evaluation. So all the waste received is gonna go to the hopper, and from the hopper to a drum feeder where it opens the bag. This is something very important for us, because we receive a lot of recyclables in bags. So we require a drum feeder. The first Mrf we did, that was Chilabert, does not have a drum feeder, and you're gonna lose one space in the conveyor selection. The selection conveyor. You're gonna use one space to open the bags, and this is something that's not useful. So we recommend to use a drum feeder if you're gonna receive recyclable in bags. Also, it helps to dosify the amount of recyclables in the whole process. Our second step is the picking belt conveyor, where here what we do is we discard all elements that can affect the process, like big elements or textiles. Also in here we separate glass, because the recyclable system, the recyclable market in Argentina, they require a glass that has to be like a bigger than the one that this Mrf produces. So if you want to recover here the glass, you should use one of these spaces for recovery. There is also a special case that is the white paper, because in here in Argentina they pay really good white paper. So the urban pickers they concentrate mainly in recover this waste stream. So they use one of the places in the boxes for this, to recover white paper. Then we have a vacuum system where the urban pickers put the plastic film and it goes to another area. It's separated from the line. An OCC screen is the next machine that in here it separates cardboard and glass according to the dimensions. I won't go in detail, but again, the glass in here is not a glass that we can sell, so it's waste for us. Then we have the glass cleaner that for again, it's another thing, but it doesn't really work for our market. The CP screen separates what it comes from from the waste stream in 2 and 3 dimensions. The 2 dimensions mainly everything that is paper, and if something of the cardboard has passed on, it also recovers in here. And 3 dimensions like bottles, Tetra Brick, and plastic, they continue in the line. Then we have the optical sorter. In this case, we have an optical sorter to separate transparent, clear PET bottles. And it has a system where it throws air and automatically separate this type of bottle. We can use it also for by color, but as transparent, clear PET bottles, they pay more, and we have much more of this type of stream. We prefer to use it in this configuration. And then we have a picking belt conveyor where urban pickers separate Tetra Brick, aluminum cans, color PET bottles, and other plastics, and whatever is not recovered, it goes to it is a discard material. We have also a magnetic separator in the middle that separates steel elements, and here you have the boxes where we have the different materials, and you can open each of these boxes. This goes to a conveyor and to a machine baler, and then you have the bale finished. So this is like our process. We have a small video, maybe Nelly or Adriana, if we can show it, it would be great. I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. I guess they're seeing my presentation again. So there, So when we talk about the roles in a Mrf management, we must say that the operation is done by the cooperative of urban waste pickers. But for instance, the building maintenance and the cleaning service that it's key for these operations, it's done by a private company that has a contract with the government of the city of Buenos Aires. So that's the classification line maintenance. It's done by a private company with a special contract with the city, and the mobile machinery rental, it goes in another contract also with a private company. However, the commercialization product is done by the cooperative of urban pickers, and this is something key when you think of what we are going to see, the financial evaluation. Regarding management control is developed by the government. What we do is we see that each of all these participants do okay their job, and this is something complicated because here there are many participants or actors, so sometimes you have to manage to control all of them. And when we say about the number of workers that we have or the organigram that the city of Buenos Aires implemented, here we must say that most of the workers are urban pickers, except the ones that we hired, like maintenance personnel or security personnel. They are privately contract, but the rest are urban pickers. So we have a general coordinator that belongs to the city of Buenos Aires, and then we have our administration responsible also from the city, and a commercialization department that is in charge of the urban waste pickers are responsible of this department. Regarding the cleaning service, we have urban pickers that work and also a private contract, and we have an operation responsible that this one is from the government, but all the personnel or operators are going to be of the urban pickers. So we have between 4 to 8 people in the pre-selection area for the inspection operators in every of all the conveyors that we have. We have between 20 to 32 people. In the area of baler machine, we have 3 operators. In the area of scale, where we weight the trucks and the bags where it comes to recyclable, we have between 4 to 7 people. And for the forklift truck, we have between 4 to 7 people operating or helping the forklift truck operator. So the minimum amount of workers that we think these types of Mrf required are 44 per shift, but we have over 69 people working in the Mrf. So now this is our experience. For the criteria design, some of these criteria design that we have put in the presentation are things that we consider, and others are things that we didn't consider, but we learned afterwards that they were very important. For instance, composition, of course, is key, and quantity of the waste expected to receive. It's key, are the 2 most important variables to know how you're going to receive it and what you're expecting for every day, per year, per hour. It's going to change the design of your Mrf. Regarding the collection system, also it's very, very important to know which type of collection system you have, the frequency. If you have certain hours of collection, we have like in 3 hours, we collect all waste. So you're going to receive at the same hour all the trucks in the Mrf. So this is something that you have to consider for the storage of all that material. Also, it's not the same according to the stream, like drop-off sites, they generate one type of material, door-to-door collection, it generates another type, and recyclable bin container another. For instance, recyclable bin container, you can receive mixed waste, like a lot of contamination. So it's gonna make a lot of smell. So you're gonna have to process it much more faster than maybe drop-off sites or door-to-door collection.
Melissa, just to alert you a bit of time.
Okay, I will go fast. The scope collection area, it's something you also have to take into account, as well as the distance from the generator to the site to the facility, the surface available. Also, if you have nearby highways and all the environmental impacts that your facility is gonna affect. According to the design of the facility capacity you're expecting, if you want to do a future enlargement, we didn't consider this, and this was one of the things that now limits our waste recycling sector. And the output requirement is very important to know what is the market expecting. Also to have economic and financial considerations, a political strategy to the future and national and local regulations. What we think is we can improve a lot our facilities capacity, and the idea is to do several small facilities, dividing the different places like north, south, east, and west, so to reduce the transport, and it's for our experience it's better. So I'm gonna go to maybe just a quick view. Financially, the city of Buenos Aires has all the capex, $7 million each facility, and we have paid for all of that. And regarding the operational expenditures, it also goes to the city. We pay to urban pickers a subsidy, health insurance, and other benefits. And then we have all the costs regarding building maintenance, classification line maintenance, mobile machinery rental, all the services and consumables. And the cooperative, they receive the money from the sales. So they receive this subsidy from the city plus the profitability of the sale of the market. So this is not economically nor financially sustainable for the city. And this is one key challenge for us. So lessons to be learned. Main objective of the Mrf was to improve hygiene and safety for urban waste pickers, and this was accomplished, as well as increasing processing capacity. The strength of the program is that we made a different way to tackle recyclable waste management system, upgrading the role of the urban pickers, but the weakness is that we have a really bad waste segregation. Still, we have to work in quantity and quality with the citizens to improve Mrf efficiency, and it's not really sustainable in economical and financial terms, but we have as opportunities like to incorporate extended producer responsibility regulations, and the system is evolving. First, there were urban pickers in the street taking recyclables, and now they are working shifts, and they have hours of where they have to work. So this is something that it's evolving. The threats is that due to COVID, there has been a backup in the recycling system, like the recyclable waste segregation has been highly affected. We receive much less material and of poorer quality. Also, the recyclable industry has been severely affected, as well as we have seen an increase in the informal sector. So these are just some photographs that you're going to have if you want of the different material recovery facilities, and some recognitions internationally for the waste management system of Buenos Aires. That is not only the Mrf, but there has been a great work regarding how to improve our waste management in general. So thank you very much, and sorry for the delay.
No worries. Thank you so much, Melissa. I think it was very interesting, and that's why it's always good. Maybe just one follow-up question already from my side, while Sylvia is also joining us for the Q&A. You mentioned in the beginning that you have like your recycling system is based on two different kinds of facilities. The big Mrfs that you showed right now, like the more mechanized, and then you have 15 smaller recycling centers. Could you maybe just explain shortly how these, like, what's the interaction? Is one of like, do the smaller recycling centers also send some, like, do they do a pre-sorting and send some of that also to the Mrfs, or are they totally separated? And are they just like, you know, that some parts of are the smaller ones just there for some small neighborhoods, and then the more bigger, like, you know, what is the organization behind those? It's just, I think, interesting, maybe a question that I had before we go to the questions from the audience.
Okay, yes, a good question. We have 4 types of facilities. Mrf is one, but we have different technologies there are 4 types of technologies. Like, there are ones that are really small and they sorting in the ground. So this mainly comes from small cooperatives that they process few amount of recyclable waste. So it is not really useful to put a conveyor, or the space is very, very small. So it's almost impossible to put machinery. They don't interact, like each one is owned by a different cooperative, so we cannot switch product, because if not, you're gonna reduce the profitability. So they are very they own the waste and they don't want to take it to another place, so you have to be very careful there. Then we have like recycling centers, we call them also green centers, where you have only a conveyor and a baler, so that is all. And then you have like more proficiency that's in between the Mrf and these ones, where you have like a better implementation, and you have like a mirror, you have two conveyor belts, and it's like different. It's not the same, but mainly what we have, our problem is that as there are 12 different cooperatives and each one of them have a special space in the city of Buenos Aires, they process them according to their willingness mainly.
Okay, thank you. I think very interesting. I mean, also the different. It sounds as it was a bit grown, you know. Like, I mean, especially a city as big as Buenos Aires, that some initiatives started, and then that's what came out of it. So very interesting. Great. I'm looking at the Q&A, and at the time, I think we have the possibility to let people speak. So don't be afraid. If you have a question, you can also raise your hand now instead of typing it in the Q&A box. And as the first two questions are from the same person, Fernando Duvane. Fernando, we are going to give you the possibility to speak yourself. So you would have to, we're unmuting you. We hope. So you can actually, yeah, you're unmuted. So now you just have to unmute yourself and then you can ask your question directly. We can't hear you. Yeah, now.
Yes. Good day, afternoon, or good day, depending on where you are and what the time is. My question is, I wanted to know, I'm in a low-income country, and my government does not promote this kind of technologies. We don't have this kind of separation of waste at the source. So I'd like to know how can we access these technologies as an entrepreneur, because I'm investing my time nowadays preparing a project towards the separation and recycling waste. So I'd like to know how can I access this kind of equipment that our presenters shared with us here today. Thank you.
Sylvia, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah. So how can you access this kind of equipment? That's what I understood, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, feel free to contact me because we can always see. It depends on where you are based, but whether we can help you. And then the question is, I think it gets to the picture where I explained the supply chain and then the organization around it. So who can operate a facility? Does the municipality have any land that they would be willing to give? Where can we get the funding from? And I think you also mentioned the source separation part. I understand that in many places this is not yet in place, and we are also pragmatic, and we always say, okay, you can start somewhere, and I think where you can always start is with recyclable materials, because there is in many places we would need to see whether there's a local market for it, but there is a market for certain recyclable materials, and you can start with collecting those and then gradually scale up towards other types of materials, and then maybe also see whether the government can actually do something, or whether you can individually as an entrepreneur do something about source separation. So we actually also see a lot of companies that start with collecting business to business. So they start collecting with companies, for example, because it's more easy to get them to separate their waste. So yeah, it's a bit of a big question that you're asking me, because I think there's many steps to take, but yeah, I'm happy to also have a chat another time to talk about more of the details, but I'm hoping this helps to answer your question.
Great, Fernando, anything else you want to add?
No, I'm happy for this answer. So I think that I have to work hard in order to have all this information clear and also to access this technology and these equipment. So this is my duty. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then the next person, the next question was from Muguru, which was, I think, a bit well, already answered, but I'll anyway give you the chance to talk if you want to. So let's see if I just need to scroll down in the attendance list. Okay, Muguru, you just need to unmute yourself and then you could ask your question. You also raised your hand, so that's a good coincidence. To unmute yourself, you just have to go on the control panel on the right and click on the microphone there. No, that was the hand. Above the hand, there should be somewhere a microphone. Otherwise, we'll ask the question you post in the chat. Because, like, I mean, it's a bit along the lines of Fernando, but more like concrete. He wants to know if this recycling plant can be replicated in sub-Saharan Africa. And now the question is, looking at the time, this was a question for Melissa. So yeah, Melissa, do you think this is possible?
So the question was again?
Sorry, if you think something like what you presented could be replicated in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, that depends. I think I'm a little bit with Sylvia. You have to understand that, like, first of all, your composition, what the amount of waste that you generate in the municipal area, in the commercial area. You have to talk with the local market, see if there is a local market, how you can promote a local market. The United Nations have different programs that you can ask for assessment, because waste management is something really, really big, and mainly it involves not only recyclable, because each of the waste stream you have to, like, establish waste management plans. Like, if you have recyclable contaminated with organics, it is not that useful. So sometimes you have to think of where the city wants to know which one is the strategy, and then see if a Mrf is the one that responds to your characterization or to your status. Like, it's not for everyone, and it's even not for like, it's really expensive. Like, the cost and operational cost and the capital expenditures are really, really high. So I don't think that I will recommend a Mrf for everyone. There should be a bottom of a real evaluation, at least for our experience, because it's not economically sustainable. So in a COVID scenery and with economical crisis, it's a whole issue. I hope I have answered.
I'm sure. I don't know, Sylvia, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it really, like Melissa's also saying, it really depends on the local ecosystem and how much waste is there available, what kind of funding can you achieve. And I think what I tried to explain in my presentation is that you can take it stepwise. So we started with the smaller centers, and I think you are also doing that, Melissa. In your smaller centers, you only have sorting belts and balers, and then you can gradually scale up with things like screens or bag openers or optical sorting. I mean, I'm impressed by what you all have into your Mrf. So if you ask me, maybe in a big city in sub-Saharan Africa, it also depends on the country. Maybe yes, but I would rather say maybe let's go for a facility where there's more manual sorting with maybe the screen, like I mentioned, but a little bit more in between solution in place. Yeah.
Great. Thank you to you too. Going to the next question from Dorian. Dorian, you are unmuted. You just would have to unmute yourself as well with this. Yes, and you can ask your question. Go ahead. Somehow we cannot hear you, unfortunately.
I'm trying.
No.
Okay, now yes. Hi, good afternoon. My question is for Melissa. I was wondering about the detail on the costs. You said that the municipality covers CapEx and OpEx, and it's a lot of money. And I was wondering if that's financed by a specific payment from the users, a tax for waste management, or it's coming from general tax or general money from the municipality, or how does it work? Thanks.
Yeah, it comes from a general budget. There is no fee for the people or for citizens or for consumers. Unfortunately, this is our weakness in the project, and I think it's also the opportunity in the future to start thinking of a more sustainable in economical and financial terms. However, as Sylvia said, we are evolving. We learn from our mistakes also. First, all of this started because there were scavengers in the waste, and they took the cardboard. Maybe that's what in Argentina they are called cartoneros. That it's cardboard. So at the beginning they only took the cardboard. So it's more like a social issue involved in an environmental issue. So I guess that in the future, maybe in 5 years or 7 years, if we do this webinar again, we are going to have a solution regarding this part. But no, we do not charge. We pay it from the general budget. But we have revenues because we don't sell this waste to landfill. So for us, it's very, very expensive, the landfill. So there you have some kind of indirect income. But no, unfortunately, no.
Can I add something about that? Yeah, I think, and that's also what I mentioned, that the business case is indeed very tight, and I think you need household collection fees. Like in Europe, we are paying really high amounts. It can be lower in upcoming economies. But I do also think that these developments in terms of plastic credits, and there's also more and more companies that are asking for, that want recycled content because consumers are asking it. So I think that will help, but it will take time. So like Melissa is also saying. And then of course, there's also better technologies being developed to do something with low value waste. But it's all bits and pieces. It's really a bit of a puzzle, also the business case. Yeah. And the landfill tax, like Melissa is mentioning, is helping because it means it's actually a cost if you do not recycle it. So that's something you would ideally also have in place. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Dorian, I'm assuming your question was answered and you don't want to follow up?
Perfect, it was perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you. Then we are going to Prakash. We are unmuting you, Prakash, so please go ahead, you're unmuted. Well, unfortunately, we cannot hear you, Prakash. No. Okay, maybe you put your question after all in the Q&A box so we can answer it, because unfortunately we cannot hear you. And we move on to the next person who's raising the hand. That is Solomon. Solomon, you would also, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon from Ghana.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes. My question goes to Melissa. In your presentation, I did not see where the organics were going. So maybe if you can throw light on it, what were you doing and what was the composition for your organic waste? Now, for us in the Sub-Saharan African region, most of our waste composition, we have the organics going as high as 60%. And it is also very viscous and very sticky to the extent that when you are applying Mrf facilities, passing them through the trommel, it sticks a lot and then you have contaminated materials. And we are also not very good at the source segregation of the waste. So is it that you are practicing organic source segregated waste to the extent that you hardly find them in your municipal solid waste? Thank you.
Well, okay, this is the best topic for me. I love organics. It's my core, so thank you for asking. Yeah, it's a whole issue, organics. Here and everywhere there is a whole issue. We do have composting facilities, food waste composting facilities. They are a little bit small, like only of 30 tons per day. We receive organics mainly from the private sector, like for instance, supermarkets, hotels, gastronomics. We also receive from the public sector, like the buildings of the government. We segregate inorganics and recyclable. And also we receive organics from what we call vulnerable areas, like areas where you have people with few resources. So we segregate there in 3 fractions: organic, recyclable, and other waste. However, in our case, it's similar as yours. We have a lot, the organics that we collect, they have like a huge amount of humidity. So for our process of compost, is a whole thing that we have, it's a whole issue. So we have to modify all our facility because of that. We also have mechanical and biological treatment facility that processes over 1,250 tons per day of municipal solid waste. In there, we treat the organic also by a composting process, but the material that we generate in there, it's not that good in quality. So we use it in a local landfill to use it as soil. So it's not really useful. And then we have 3 composting centers where we receive like all the green waste, the organic green waste generated in the big parks, and we compost also all that material. What I must say is that, as I told before, I think the strategy has to be together, like what we can do with organics, what we can do with recyclable, how these 2 streams work together. Because once you segregate the organic, it's much better to segregate the recyclable materials. It's much easier. And that is, I think, what I must say regarding our organic stream. We have a lot of work to do also in there, because the recyclable system started because there were scavengers in the waste, and politicians didn't want scavengers in the waste, so they started formalizing them as a solution. That it was great, but the organic does not happen the same. So they have been sent to landfill over the last, I must say, 8 years, and the first facility of organic waste treatment started in 2012. So it's really, really much more newer, the organic waste system, than the recyclable system. And we have a lot of work to do. But this is our experience. And composting has helped us a lot to reduce the amount of organic. And we have used that, for instance, the green waste compost that we produce, or the compost that we produce from the green waste composting facility, is really, really one of good quality, as well as the one that we produce in the organic from food waste. So it has shown the authorities that the compost is good, that can be reused in the city, and this generates revenues because we don't have to go and buy compost. So I guess I hope I have answered your question. But yeah, and last but not least, I want to say, because it was in the presentation, but I didn't say it because I didn't have enough time, but it's very important to think of the climate change action plan. This also has to go in hand with how we are going to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases, and what is our expectations for 2030, for 2050, and how waste management affect those. In our city, we have a climate change action plan that has helped us to put waste also over the table for politicians. So this is something like a key thing that I don't know, in your cities with Paris Pact and everything, maybe there is some impulse. Sorry, that's all.
Great, thank you, Melissa, and I hope, Solomon, your question was answered. In regards of time, I'm just going to really quickly use one last question from Prakash, who put the question in the chat, and I'll give that maybe to Sylvia. if you know of any case studies or documents of successful MRFs implemented under PPP schemes. And they are right now doing a feasibility studies in Mauritius to start source segregation and construct and operate MRFs under PPP.
Yeah, I think a lot. I think a lot of them are PPP constructions, because quite often the operator is not the municipality, but the municipality is offering the land, and there's some kind of a concession. They might even give a contribution for a collection, for example. So yeah, a lot of them actually. So I think there's a lot of successful examples and many different cases possible. We've seen a lot, but I mean, I've never done actually a study about it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. Yeah, I personally actually think it might work better than the municipality doing everything, but it depends a lot on the capabilities of your government, of course. So I think it can be a very powerful way to manage it. And I see Melissa is nodding.
Okay, great. Then our time's up. So thank you very much to Melissa and Sylvia for joining today and for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you for the audience and for the questions, for participating today. And we will, well, we haven't planned the next webinar in our series yet, but we will actually also have another one looking at landfills, because even though we try to be zero waste, probably we will still need landfills in some parts of this world for some of the waste that we produce, unfortunately. So we will have a look at what options we have there. And yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. And as we said, the slides will be available on the website as well as the recording. Thank you for joining. Thank you again to Melissa and Sylvia, and wishing you all the best and stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you very much.